Thank you. First of all, Ray, I want to tell you that I thought you were terrific in the debate. The only way to pay off the deficit is to increase taxes. I wonder if you could clarify that issue a bit for me.
Well, I agree with you. People making around that range, they're overly taxed. We've had an 80% increases in taxes provincially, plus a myriad of user fees. And what we have tried to do is look at what other provinces are doing. Yes, we have a deficit and a debt, and it's serious. And we're going to have to deal with it, but we have to look at the revenue side. And we've found that Alberta, basically, compared to other provinces and even other countries, is basically a tax haven for the wealthy. And what we suggested is, okay, the people that have benefited the most from our healthcare system and our educational system, let's help us pay so we can continue these needed services in the future. And in terms of individuals, we're looking at moving from an 8 to a 20% surcharge at 80,000 gross, 30% at 110,000. And then our proposal to deal with profitable corporations is, again, not to overly tax them, but to be competitive with other provinces. That's where we would start. We're definitely against the sales tax because it frightens us, because we think it's going to drive more people to the unemployment level.
Good question. Thanks so much. Line 5. Go ahead.
Hi there. I got one problem with your request to raise taxes for corporations. Yeah. The thing is, if you raise taxes to them, they're just going to pass on the cost to the average Joe, and the average Joe is just going to pay more. And if you raise it also, you're going to drive business out of the province down to the States or to Mexico and make things worse.
Yeah.
The key is spending.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's just not the case. I say to people, where are they going to go? What we're talking about is competitive with Americans. I don't know if people understand this, that even Ronald Reagan, the most conservative Republican ever, brought in a minimum tax on corporations of 21% because he found that they weren't paying their taxes. So I'm not saying I agree with you that if Alberta all of a sudden was overly taxing or not competitive with other provinces in the United States, we'd have a problem. But we're not. What we're talking about is very competitive with other provinces, and we better collect that money. And the point I keep making, too, that it's an important one, that there's a tremendous competitive advantage for our corporate sector if we have a good public educational system and specifically our healthcare system. If you compare to the Americans where they have to pay those insurance rates, that's breaking them. So
Excellent.
We think it's very competitive.
Thanks so much for that call. Line 6, go ahead.
Hi, I'm curious, is it possible to, because we know that it's growing by the second, or will it just hurt our economy by through layoffs?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of it.
Is it possible to stop the debt cold turkey?
Oh, no.
Without damaging the economy?
No, I don't think it is. That's a point that I've been trying to make during this campaign. We recognize that we have a problem out there. And the only answer from the other two is they say they can balance the books in 4 years just on the expenditure side. 84% of our expenditures go into such things as health care, education in the broadest sense, including advanced education, plus social services, and our welfare budget is going up. So if you lay people off and you just decimate your social services, your welfare budget's going to skyrocket, and you're not going to be competitive if you don't have a good educational system, a good healthcare system in the next number of years. And so I say it's a balance. Let's cut where we can, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Okay, thanks so much. Good question. Line 7.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, I watched the debate last night, and I'd like to ask Ray Martin why on Bill 41 he would cut back on private education.
Well, I didn't say I would cut back. I said I had some concerns that we're moving too much in that direction. I'm a firm believer in the public educational system. I can't turn back the clock. I think private education is here. But I do think that we really have to put some money into public education. That's going to be the most important in the long run. But at the same time, I did say that we were prepared to support Bill 41 overall. It was just that the government just didn't bring it forward.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks so much. Line 8, good morning.
Hi, Mr. Martin.
Hi.
Congratulations on your performance last night.
Well, thank you.
I've got a question about post-secondary education and the pressure that's being placed on institutions, especially universities. I believe the problem is that as a result of academic tenure and the lack of accountability with respect to administration in universities, the real working people are losing their jobs at universities, and what is your plan to make it more productive and efficient?
It's a good question.
Well, that's, I wish I had a magic answer that I could give you here. Tenure, of course, that's a major debate within the university, as you're aware. Some people would argue that it's good, it gives people some academic protection, that they can be a little more innovative and not get fired. Others say it's sort of a rest home. I expect the truth is somewhere in between the two. Let me say this about advanced education, beyond the funding. You know that the figures that we have, over 60% of the new jobs created in the province of Alberta to the year 2001 will require some form of advanced education. Now, people generally think to university, but only 13% of those jobs will be at university. It'll be community colleges, apprenticeship. So there's some tremendous implications. I think we have to relook at the whole advanced educational system to make sure that we have the right programs, be it university or community colleges, so we can compete in that global information society. And maybe we have to take a look at how we're operating the universities, tenure, and all the rest of it in terms of that review.
I wonder if the caller isn't also implying that there should be more funding for advanced education. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was that your implication? No, he's gone. Oh, well, thanks very much. Good morning, line 4.
Good morning. I'm calling from Fort McMurray.
Hi.
I'd like to say congratulations on your debate last night, Mr. Martin. I think you were way out front. The other two have a lot of catching up to do.
Well, thank you.
My question is, what if the ND do form the next government, what is your commitment to oil sands?
Well, oil sands, of course, depends on the federal government and the private companies. I was up in Fort McMurray not that long ago and tried to get an update on that. It doesn't look like it's on the drawing board. What seems to be the future in terms of tar sands, because the major developments, as you know, if you're from Fort McMurray, so expensive, is smaller plants tagging into the Syncrudes and the Suncors. And that, in other words, that you'd see a number of smaller plants in that area. And I was frankly talking to Rick Orman, who was a former energy minister, on a plane back, and he thinks that's the future. And I guess I think there is a future there, because they're bringing the technology down, as you're probably aware, that they can do it a lot cheaper than they used to be. But I think probably the big mega projects are not going to go ahead. It'll be smaller projects, and as a government, we'd certainly look at, we want those.
Okay, good question. Thanks very much, Fort McMurray. Line 5.
Hello. I have a question, actually, that I feel hasn't been addressed. I'm an actor, and I'm very involved in the arts community. And talking about spending cuts and things, unfortunately, it seems to me that a lot of the problem in the arts is that funding is cut as one of the first cuts made. And I was curious as to what the NDP intends to do with the arts programs.
Well, I'm sort of smiling. Perhaps we can tell you after why. But yes, one of the big things that people don't understand about the arts is, I recall, that it's one of the biggest employers in the province, one of the biggest employers in Canada generally. And that you're right, it's usually the thing that gets cuts. And what happens is that, of course, beyond the appreciation of the arts, which is important in itself, is that it leads to more unemployment. What we've advocated for a long time is that funding be maintained. That's why I'm so worried about this sort of quick answer, just dealing with the expenditures and brutal cuts and massive cuts. When you ask Mr. Decor, as I said yesterday, whatever group he's talking about, he talks about brutal cuts, but he's not going to cut the arts, he's not going to cut seniors. But what is he going to cut? And I think we have to be much more specific. But I think, as far as I'm concerned, beyond the appreciation of the arts, which is important to any society, we must remember the employment factor. And if all of a sudden you're just going in with a pitch axe saying we can't afford this anymore, again, I will come back and say that you'll add to the welfare rolls. That's the reality.
Good point. Thanks very much. Line 6. Hello? 3, 2, 1, you're gone. Line 7, good morning.
Hi, just had to turn the TV down. Mr. Martin, there's a couple of questions I wanted to ask. Why are always the government trying to put on user fees for the hospital? And it hurts the social assistant people, and it hurts the senior citizens when they can't afford it.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I don't know if you're aware, I went down. I'm really worried about health care. Our party brought it in. about them moving towards a two-tiered system or much more of an American model. We were just down in Great Falls to bring the message back here. And people should, all Canadians should take a look at that. Now, some people say, you know, Klein's musing about that, gee, it's only $5, everybody can afford it. I can tell them in my riding, in the inner city of Edmonton, not everybody can afford $5. And where do you draw the line? You say $5 this year as the government has more problems, could be 15, 20, 25. And I can assure you, I see user fees as having absolutely no role to play in terms of health care in this province. We're going to fight very hard in that one.
Thanks so much. We go now to line 8. Line 8, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Martin, I saw your program last night, and I thought it was very good. And what I would like to see is some answers on this Heritage Fund. Yes. Number one, I call it pilfering. The government call it mismanagement. They have another name for it. The other thing is that I would like to see, if you're elected, that you make these people accountable. I would like the books to be opened, make these people accountable, and if there's a collusion between them, bureaucrats, and the Novotel, and the Pocklingtons, and so on and so forth,
okay.
I'd like to see these people charged,
okay.
You know, made accountable and charged.
We've got a lot of callers. I think you've made your point very well, and I'm going to tag on a supplementary, and that is, what do you plan to do with the trust fund? Keep it or sell it?
Well, we want to keep it in short run, but I want to come back to his point.
Go ahead.
I think what we need to do, and that's why we called for a public inquiry into Novotel, because that was the only way we could find evidence. I mean, we know there was a lot of stupidity there, but was there any collusion? Was there any possibility of criminal charges being laid? You couldn't do that without a public inquiry, and of course they refused to do that. The first thing we're going to do, if we were government, is have an independent audit of all the books in the province and open it up. I'm not sure any of us know the extent of the debt. It may be even worse. The extent of our involvement with all these things. I think that's very important.
Good question. Thanks very much. We go back to line 4. Good morning.
Good morning. Ray, first of all, I'd like to say that I think you did a fantastic job last night in the debate, and I'm glad you didn't let Ralph get away with too much. What I want to talk about is, you mentioned last night about big corporations who give money to the Liberals and the Tories.
Yeah.
Why does our system allow this, and how come people like Peter Pocklington get away with giving so much money to the government or to these parties?
Well, that's the way we operate our system. Political parties need money to run campaigns, and Liberals and Conservatives go down to corporate row and collect that money. And we always say, well, they're not giving it to you because they love you. They want something in return. I think we're really going to have to look at how we finance elections in the future, because you get vested interest groups that are determined. In Quebec, for example, whether we agree with them a lot of things, they're into public financing with very strict limits on how much you can spend. It's not something that we can do right now, but I think we're going to have to look at that in the future.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Okay, and thank you very much. I'm sorry to say that I tried to get through the rotation as fast as I could, but we are out of time for your calls on this segment of the program. But please don't go away. We will have a wrap-up segment with Ray Martin.